What is Tim's best guess of what legal fees Trump has been billed for in the last year?
Even though I was on the case for over a year, my portion of it is relatively small.
91 counts, felony charges, 4 different districts, states, whatever you want to call it. What would that run? Describe the most likely scenarios you foresee for Trump to be convicted or otherwise that would eliminate him from appearing on the 2024 presidential ballot. First, I have just a couple of questions from Patreon.
Sure.
So Patreon, that's my subscription network. That is what enables you and I to both be sitting here. They're our top supporters, and this one is from Charlotte. What is Tim's best guess of what legal fees Trump has been billed for in the last year?
So, the legal fees have pretty much all been covered through Political Action Committee, the PAC, Save America. And so a lot of those fees are public because they do have to do public filings. The fees in this case have been massive. And, part of that is because of, the complexity of it, but part of it also is because, quite frankly, you have these attorneys that are, billing at over $1,000 an hour, and they think that there's millions of dollars behind it. If you look at those things, you'll see that even though I was on the case for over a year, my portion of it is relatively small. But I've seen some of the attorneys on there that over the course of a year billed $5 million. And my experience, that particular attorney didn't provide any value add whatsoever. So, what's the total fees? I mean, it's got to be $20 million.
Oh, wow.
Plus at this point. Is that normal for how much something like this would cost? It's a bit excessive, but at the same time, one thing you have to remember is when you have a case that is in many ways all-consuming, you have to set aside a lot of your other work. Think about this Georgia case. They just recently said that the trial of that's going to be somewhere between 4 to 8 months long. So as a lawyer, you have to sit there and say, okay, it's certainly hourly rate, but at the same time, I'm going to have to set aside, not take in any new work, not work on my business at all, spend, 4 to 8 months living in a hotel somewhere, and those things can get expensive. Will that Georgia case cost, over $1 million per defendant? I think it will. But right now, when we're talking about, these PAC fees going, into the tens of millions of dollars, personally, I think some of the lawyers there got greedy at the trough, and now they're all of a sudden, as things are coming down with the indictments and it's going to get more time intensive, how much money is there left?
Yeah. You said that this may be a little excessive. What do you think a normal, let's say it spent $20 million, with your estimation, what would a normal human being with, what did we say, 91 counts, felony charges, 4 different districts, states, whatever you want to call it, what would that run?
Well, it really depends on the individual case. Legal fees are one of those things where they're limited only by your imagination. Okay? If you want to have the biggest, fanciest defense, the multi-million-dollar defense where you have a team of lawyers and paralegals at the table, you have a shadow jury, you have jury consultants, you have all of these other, things and laser light shows, you can do it. I've never done that. I've never found it to be valuable. I think a lot of that is more make work, and it's efforts by the attorneys to try and just suck more money out of cases. I took over a case once where the prior attorney was hiring psychodramatists to try to have the defendant act things out, whereas I looked at it and said, I have a better idea. Why don't you just sit with the guy and ask him, hey, tell me what happened? So those things, if I looked at these cases myself and I said, okay, my method of trying these cases, then my billing rate is a little bit lower because I don't maintain a big fancy office. But all 4 of these cases, I could put together a good solid defense on all these for probably 5.
5 million.
Yeah. Now, but even there, it's kind of a question of, does it cut off at the motion to dismiss phase? Do you have to go to a trial? If you do go to trial, how long is the trial going to be? How many lawyers do you want in the trial? It really can be limited by your imagination, but at the same time, I would advise everybody facing that kind of situation to have a real hard talk with your lawyer about, are all of these expenses really appropriate? And, one of the problems that a lot of clients face is that the lawyer is trying to get all these fees out of you at a time when you're facing jail. And so they'll hit you on this stuff. Oh, you got to, mortgage your house. You got to do all this stuff because you don't want to end up in jail saying, man, I wish I had hired that psychodramatist.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
And it's something that I don't like about a lot of people in my profession, where they do give a lot of us a bad name through that. But at the same time, these things can get expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, in the DC case, they're talking about millions of pages of documents.
Millions of.
Yeah.
How do you go through millions of pages of documents?
You got to hire a team to do it. Yeah, I can't do that myself.
Yeah.
I can't sit there and do it myself. I mean, certainly things are getting better now where they have certain AI solutions, but do you really want to trust ChatGPT to go through everything and figure out what your, where all the potential defenses are? Or are you going to want to have a human, usually a junior lawyer, a team of junior lawyers going through this to pull out the things that are relevant?
Yeah. Yeah. There's another question from Mr. Burns. Describe the most likely scenarios you foresee for Trump to be convicted or otherwise that would eliminate him from appearing on the 2024 presidential ballot.
The question gets interesting with that last little caveat at the end about eliminating him from the ballot. Because ultimately, none of these cases are disqualifying that they would force his removal. And all of these cases, in order for it to get to a conviction that could, while not statutorily remove him, put him into a position where it's very difficult for him to do anything, they have to get the trials done before the election. And that's why you see a lot of these prosecutors really pushing the timing of trying to get these trials done quickly. Whereas if there was not an election involved, cases of this magnitude ordinarily take over 2 years to get to a trial. So the idea that, in Georgia, they're talking about doing the first trial with 2 of the co-defendants next month, which is crazy. To actually take a case to trial within, a couple of months of the initial arraignment, that's unheard of. But they need to, if this is, as the Trump team keeps saying, election interference, then they need to have the cases brought before the election. Especially in Georgia, if they can tie him up in a courtroom and make him sit in a courtroom for 4 to 8 months every single day during the general election, he's not out debating. He's not out campaigning. So I think that that's the most likely scenario. Really comes down to a matter of timing of, are any of these cases or multiple of these cases actually going to get tried before the election?
Interesting. There's one more question here from Brody. Would it be possible especially if he is found not guilty, for Trump to sue for malicious prosecution since they keep actively searching for something to charge him with?
That sounds actually like a question the client would have asked me too. It is possible. Yeah, it's suing for malicious prosecution is not something that you frequently do, and there's a lot of hurdles to it. Prosecutorial immunity is one of the big ones. That's why when you see people that are wrongfully convicted that have their convictions overturned, all those lawsuits are against the police departments, not the prosecutors, because the prosecutors get immunity.
Okay.
And so, whenever the Manhattan District Attorney's Office screws up a case, the NYPD is the one that has to pay for it.
Oh, okay.
So, but in a case where you are found not guilty, a determination would need to be made, because malicious prosecution is a much higher standard than just simply being acquitted. Being acquitted means that they failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And so even if a jury thinks it's more likely than not that you committed the crime, if they have any reasonable doubt as to it, they have to vote for an acquittal. So it's not a statement of innocence necessarily. It is a statement you're not guilty. And so when you then go to evaluate it for malicious prosecution, you have to say, can I meet that higher standard? And I think some of these you can. I think that potentially, as we're going to discuss a little bit later, the election-related cases particularly, I think that there is a possibility of doing something there. And especially if it does have an impact on the election. Because you're essentially disrupting his job application.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.